Have you ever had one of those nights when you think life can't surprise you anymore, and then fate knocks on your door, literally bleeding? It was past midnight, rain pounding on the windows. Jake, a single father, was trying to put his little boy to sleep when he heard it, a faint, desperate knock. At first he thought it was the wind, until he opened the door. There, lying on his porch, was a woman, her police uniform soaked in blood, her lips trembling, whispering only 2 words before collapsing. "They know." Jake froze. He didn't know her, didn't know what they meant, but something in her eyes, the kind of fear you only see in people who've seen death, made him act. He carried her inside, pressed his old Army first aid kit against the wound, and called for help. But the line went dead. That's when his son pointed at the window. Outside, through the rain, a black SUV sat idling. Headlights off, watching, Jake realized. Whoever did this wasn't finished. Within minutes, his quiet home turned into a war zone. The woman woke just long enough to grab his arm and whisper a name that would later shake the entire police department to its core. But when the officers finally arrived, that name was gone from her lips. She was gone too, and Jake? He was left holding the bloodied badge of a cop no one claimed to know existed. The truth he uncovered next would expose the biggest cover-up in the city's history and put a single father and his son on the hit list of those sworn to protect them. So, what really happened that night? And why did every cop who touched this case disappear? Stay tuned, because the story you're about to hear will make you question everything about loyalty, justice, and what a father would do to protect his child. It was a storm that didn't belong to the weather report. Thunder cracked above the small town of Crestfield like the sky itself was warning someone. Jake Turner stood at the kitchen sink, staring at the single cup in his hand, listening to the soft hum of the baby monitor. His 6-year-old son, Ben, had finally fallen asleep after a long day at school. Jake's life was simple, quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes from loss. His wife, Claire, had died 3 years earlier in a car crash caused by a drunk driver. Since then, every night felt the same. Cook, clean, check Ben's homework, lock the doors, and pray for morning. But that night, the night everything changed, the quiet didn't stay. It started with a knock. Soft, hesitant. Then again, louder this time. Jake frowned, checked the clock. 12:43 a.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. The third knock came, heavier, desperate. Jake grabbed the baseball bat he kept near the door and peeked through the peephole. All he saw was darkness and rain streaming down the glass. Then a flash of lightning split the sky, revealing something that made his breath catch. A woman, slumped against the railing, her hand pressed to her stomach. He yanked the door open. "Hey!" "You okay?" The woman looked up, barely conscious. Her uniform was torn, soaked in blood and mud. A police badge dangled from her vest. "Officer L. Harris, they know," she gasped, eyes wide with terror. Then she collapsed at his feet. Jake dropped the bat and rushed forward. "Hey, stay with me!" He dragged her inside, laid her on the living room floor, and pressed a towel against the wound in her abdomen. Blood seeped through his fingers. "I'm calling an ambulance," he said, grabbing his phone. But before he could dial, the power cut out. The house fell into pitch darkness, except for the dim glow from Ben's nightlight upstairs. Jake's military instincts kicked in. He'd served 2 tours overseas. He knew when something wasn't right. This wasn't just an accident. Someone had made sure she wouldn't call for help. The woman grabbed his wrist. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't call anyone." "Not the cops." Jake froze. "You are the cops," her lips trembled. "Not all of them." And then her eyes rolled back. She passed out cold. Jake's heart pounded. He checked the window, and that's when he saw it. A black SUV, parked across the street. "Headlights off." "Engine running, Ben," he muttered under his breath. He raced upstairs, scooped his sleeping son into his arms, and carried him to the hidden storage room he'd built behind the pantry. A leftover habit from his service days. He laid Ben down gently, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Stay quiet, buddy." No matter what, he returned to the living room, but the woman was gone. The towel lay soaked in blood, leading to a trail of footprints toward the back door. Jake followed the trail outside, rain hammering his face. She wasn't far, just standing in the yard, staring into the woods like she was waiting for something. He called out, "You need help! You're bleeding out!" She turned slowly, her face pale, her voice shaking. "They killed him." "Who?" "My partner," she whispered. "He found something big." Before Jake could ask more, gunshots cracked through the night. One bullet hit the ground near his feet, spraying mud. Another shattered the porch light. Jake dropped to the ground, pulling her down with him. "Stay low!" The SUV's headlights flared to life, and then sped off into the darkness. When the police finally arrived 20 minutes later, called by a distant neighbor who'd heard the shots, they found nothing. No SUV, no bullet casings, no female officer. Just a blood-stained porch and a confused single dad clutching a badge he swore she'd dropped before vanishing. Officer Laura Harris, badge number 2146, but according to the precinct's database, no such officer existed. The next morning, Jake went to the station to explain everything. The chief listened silently, eyes cold. "Mr. Turner," he said finally, "you must be mistaken. There's no Officer Harris here. Maybe it was someone impersonating a cop." Jake frowned. "You think someone faked an entire uniform? A badge number? A police radio?" The chief leaned forward. "I think you should stop asking questions." Jake stared at him, realizing the fear in the chief's voice wasn't for Jake. It was for himself. He left the station, his hands shaking. That night, while putting Ben to bed, he heard something slip through the mail slot. A small envelope. No return address. Inside was a photo, a blurry picture of a man and woman in uniform, smiling. The woman was Officer Harris. On the back, in trembling handwriting, were 2 words, "Trust no one." Jake knew then that he was part of something much bigger, something meant to stay buried. And as he looked out the window, he saw that same black SUV parked again under the streetlight, engine humming softly, watching, waiting. This time, Jake didn't call for help. He went to the basement, opened a locked chest he hadn't touched in years, and pulled out his old service pistol. Whatever was coming, he'd face it head on, because this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about his son, and a cop who died trying to tell the truth. Morning came, but the storm hadn't really left. The rain had stopped, sure, but in Crestfield, the air still smelled of fear. Jake Turner hadn't slept a minute. The photo of Officer Harris sat on his table, water-stained and creased, staring back at him like a ghost that refused to rest. Her eyes seemed to say one thing, "Finish what I started." He poured himself a cup of black coffee and stared out the window. The SUV was gone, but he knew they were still watching. At exactly 8:14 a.m., Jake dropped Ben off at school like it was any other day. He smiled, waved, told him he loved him. But every instinct screamed not to turn his back. Then he drove straight to the last place Officer Harris had ever been seen alive. The Crestfield storage lot. That's where her badge had been logged, on the city's street cams hours before she stumbled onto his porch. The lot was empty, surrounded by chain-link fences and silence. Jake parked and slipped through a hole in the gate, moving low, cautious. Old instincts kicked in, the kind that had kept him alive in Afghanistan. In the far corner of the lot, he found it, tire marks deep and recent, mixed with drops of dried blood. And beside them, a small police radio, cracked. He picked it up, brushed off the mud, and turned it on. Static hissed. Then a faint voice broke through. "Unit 2146, compromised, trust." Then silence. Jake froze. That was her voice. Harris. He looked around, scanning the shadows. Someone else had been here recently. Behind one of the storage units, a metal door hung half open. Inside, the smell of gasoline and rot hit him hard. There were files scattered on the floor, police reports, mugshots, evidence bags. But one file stood out, a brown folder marked Project Kingslayer. He flipped it open. Inside were photos of city officials, Judges, detectives, even the police chief. Shaking hands with a man Jake recognized instantly. A face he'd seen in the papers months ago. Senator Raymond Cole was the pride of Crestfield, the man promising to clean up corruption. But in these photos, he was surrounded by drug traffickers, cash, and illegal shipments. Jake's heart pounded. Harris and her partner must have found this, and that's why they were hunted. Before he could take more photos, he heard it, the sharp click of a safety being released. "Turn around slowly, Turner." Jake raised his hands and turned. Standing in the doorway was Detective Paul Briggs, one of the cops who'd been at his house last night. "Gun drawn, eyes cold. You shouldn't be here," Briggs said. Jake stared him down. "You knew her, didn't you, Harris?" Briggs didn't answer. "She came to my house dying, Briggs. She tried to warn me. About you, about all of this." Briggs's jaw tightened. "You don't understand what's going on." "Oh, I understand enough," Jake said. "Your whole department's working for Cole. You're cleaning up his messes." Briggs's eyes softened for a second. "You think this is simple? You think I want to do this?" He took a shaky breath. "They have my family, Jake. My wife. My kid." For a moment, Jake saw the man behind the badge. Scared, broken, trapped. "Then help me," Jake said. "We can expose this." Briggs hesitated. Then from somewhere outside, an engine roared. Tires screeched. "Too late," he muttered. A black SUV slammed through the fence, headlights cutting through the dark. Men in tactical gear spilled out. No police insignias, no hesitation. Jake dove behind a crate as bullets tore through the walls. Briggs fired back, yelling, "Go! Get out of here!" Jake grabbed the folder, bolted through a side exit, and sprinted toward his truck. Bullets shattered the windshield as he gunned the engine, tearing out of the lot with the SUV in pursuit. Rain started again, sheets of it hammering the road as Jake sped through empty streets. The SUV followed close, trying to ram him off the road. He reached for his glove box, yanked out his old service pistol, and aimed at the rearview mirror. One shot, the SUV swerved. Another shot, hit. Smoke poured from their hood as they crashed into a light pole. Jake didn't stop. He drove straight home, heart racing, hands trembling. When he burst through the door, Ben was waiting, holding his backpack. "Dad, there's a car outside," he said softly. Jake rushed to the window. Another unmarked car, parked too close, too quiet. He shut the blinds, pulled Ben close. "We're going for a drive, okay? Just a little trip." "Are we in trouble?" Ben asked, voice shaking. Jake forced a smile. "Not if we're smart." They packed fast, a few clothes, cash, food. Jake slid the folder into his bag, double-checked his gun, and headed for the truck. But before he could open the door, a voice spoke behind him. "Going somewhere, Mr. Turner?" It was Chief Douglas, the man from the station, standing in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, a gun gleaming at his side. Jake's stomach sank. "You're part of this too," Douglas smiled thinly. "Part of it? Son, I built it." He stepped closer. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you. Give me the folder, and maybe you and your boy walk out of here." Jake didn't move. His hand tightened around Ben's shoulder. Douglas sighed. "You think this is about money? Power? No. This is about control." Harris didn't understand that. She died because she cared too much. Jake glared. "And you're about to make the same mistake." Before the chief could react, Jake slammed the front door into him, knocking the gun loose. A struggle broke out. Fists, shouts, broken glass. Ben screamed. Jake tackled the chief, punching until Douglas hit the floor. He grabbed Ben, the folder, and sprinted out the back door into the pouring rain. They ran through the woods behind. The house, Jake's heart pounding, Ben clutching his hand tight. Behind them, flashlights danced through the trees. Voices shouted. Jake stopped only when he saw the glow of train lights through the fog. The night freight to Chicago was thundering past. "Hold on," he yelled. He lifted Ben, jumped, barely. catching the rail of the last car as the train roared away from Crestfield. They were gone. But for how long? As the train disappeared into the night, Jake looked down at the folder in his hands. Inside, one photo caught his eye, a photo of Harris and a man in plain clothes. Her partner. On the back of it were 3 words, scribbled in her handwriting. He's still alive. Jake knew then this wasn't over. He hadn't just stumbled into a crime. He'd inherited a war. The night stretched on forever as the train roared through the darkness. Jake Turner held his son close, his mind racing faster than the wheels beneath them. He stared at the photo again, Officer Harris and her partner both smiling. On the back, those 3 chilling words, he's still alive. If Harris's partner was still breathing, he was the only one left who could prove what really happened. By sunrise, the train slowed near a small cargo stop on the outskirts of Chicago. Jake and Ben slipped off unnoticed. He found an old motel, the kind where no one asked questions, and checked in under a fake name. While Ben slept, Jake studied the folder again. Hidden between the pages of evidence, he found something new. A map. Red circles marked several warehouses around the city. One of them was labeled Unit 12, Safe House. Jake felt it in his gut. That's where Harris's partner had been hiding. He waited until nightfall. Then, leaving Ben with a note and a loaded phone, he headed out. The warehouse district was silent. Just the hum of old streetlights and the buzz of power lines. Unit 12 sat at the end of the row, its windows boarded up, a single light flickering inside. Jake crept in through a broken side door. The air smelled like rust and dust. Then he heard it. Movement. The click of a gun. "Don't move," a voice warned. Jake raised his hands. "I'm not here to fight. I'm looking for Officer Marcus Lane, partner of Laura Harris." Silence. Then, from the shadows, a man stepped forward, mid-30s, beard, tired eyes, gun steady. "Who are you?" he asked. "Name's Jake Turner. Harris came to me before she died." "She said they know." Lane froze. The gun trembled in his hand. "She's dead?" Jake nodded. "She bled out on my porch. Tried to warn me." Lane's jaw clenched. He lowered the gun. "Damn it." "Laura." He sat down on an old crate, rubbing his temples. "We were so close. We found proof. The whole force, the senator, the money trail. She said she'd deliver the files. I was supposed to meet her that night. But I got ambushed." He lifted his shirt slightly, revealing a long scar across his ribs. "Barely made it out." Jake tossed the brown folder on the table. "You mean this?" Lane's eyes widened. "You have no idea what you're holding." "Then tell me," Jake said. Lane opened the folder, flipping through the documents. "Project Kingslayer. It's a covert operation run by Cole, using dirty cops to smuggle drugs and weapons under police transport. They used Harris and me to move shipments, thinking we wouldn't notice. When she found out, she started copying files, building evidence. But the chief found out." Jake's stomach turned. "Douglas," Lane nodded. "Yeah, he's Cole's lapdog. And now that you have this file, you're their next target." Jake looked at him. "Then we expose them." "All of them," Lane hesitated. "It's not that easy. Every channel is compromised. Internal affairs, the press, even the FBI office here. We tried before. The moment a name went public, the witnesses vanished." Jake's voice hardened. "Then we go live, online, right now." Before Lane could answer, a faint buzz filled the air. Then, the screech of tires outside. Lane's eyes widened. "They found us." Jake grabbed his pistol. Lane checked his rifle. The lights flickered, and then shattered under gunfire. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Bullets ripped through walls, shattering crates and glass. Jake and Lane returned fire, ducking behind metal shelves. "Get to the back door," Lane shouted. Jake sprinted across the room, returning fire with every step. He hit one of the attackers, a masked man in tactical gear, before diving behind a steel beam. Lane covered him, firing steady, precise. "We need to move now." They pushed toward the exit, but as Lane reached the door, a single shot rang out. Lane staggered. A red bloom spread across his chest. "No." Jake grabbed him, dragging him behind cover. Lane's breathing was shallow. "Take it, the flash drive." "In my pocket," Jake fumbled, pulling out a small metal drive. "What's on it?" "Everything." Names, payments, videos. Enough to bury them all. "Stay with me, man," Jake said, pressing his hand to the wound. Lane smiled weakly. "Tell her." "I finished it." Then his hand fell limp. Jake's throat tightened. He looked up just in time to see a silhouette in the doorway. Chief Douglas himself, pistol raised. "End of the line, Turner." Jake ducked as Douglas fired. The bullet grazed his shoulder, burning hot. Jake rolled, kicked over a drum and returned fire. Douglas laughed coldly. "You think this changes anything? You leak that drive, you'll be dead before sunrise." Jake reloaded, voice steady. "Then at least they'll know the truth." He fired. The shot hit Douglas in the leg. The chief stumbled, crashing into a stack of crates. Jake ran, through the back exit, into the alley, sprinting into the rain-soaked streets. He didn't stop until he was blocks away, soaked and bleeding, clutching the flash drive in his fist. Back at the motel, Ben was waiting by the window, tears in his eyes. "Dad!" He ran into Jake's arms. "I thought you weren't coming back." Jake hugged him tight. "I promised you, didn't I? I always come back." He sat down at the motel desk, plugged the flash drive into his old laptop, and stared at the files. Video footage, bank statements, confessions, all of it real. His finger hovered over the keyboard. "Are you sure about this?" He whispered to himself. Ben looked up at him. "Mom said heroes tell the truth, even when it's scary." Jake smiled through the pain. "Yeah, she did. He uploaded everything. To every platform, every news outlet, every feed that would take it. Within minutes, the world saw the truth." The files spread like wildfire, showing Chief Douglas, Senator Cole, and half the department laundering millions through fake police contracts. Phones buzzed. Reporters swarmed. Sirens wailed. By dawn, federal agents had raided Crestfield PD. Cole was arrested trying to flee the state. Douglas was found dead. A suicide, they said, but Jake knew better. He watched the news in silence. Ben asleep beside him, rain still pattering against the window. The reporter's voice echoed. "Anonymous evidence leaked overnight has exposed a massive police corruption ring tied to several high-ranking officials. The whistleblower remains unidentified." Jake turned off the TV. He looked at his son, then at the sky beginning to lighten. Laura Harris hadn't died for nothing, and somewhere, somehow, justice had finally caught up. 3 weeks later. The small diner on the edge of Crestfield had seen better days, but to Jake Turner, it was peace. For the first time in years, no black SUVs, no sirens. No shadows watching from across the street, just the smell of coffee, bacon, and the sound of his son's laughter. Ben sat in the booth by the window, crayons scattered around his pancakes. He was drawing a picture, a tall man, a woman in a police uniform, and a little boy holding hands. Jake smiled. "Who's that, buddy?" Ben grinned. "That's you." "That's me. And that's the lady who saved us." Jake froze for a second. "The lady?" "Yeah," Ben said innocently. "The one from the dream. She said she was watching us." Jake's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. Harris's face still haunted his sleep, her blood on his hands, her last words echoing. "They know." He reached across the table, ruffled Ben's hair and smiled faintly. "She's a hero, kiddo." Ben nodded proudly. "Like you." Jake chuckled, but deep down he knew the truth. Heroes didn't walk away clean. They just learned how to live with what was left behind. After breakfast, Jake drove to the cemetery. The morning sun spilled gold over the grass, glinting off the polished headstones. He carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, the kind Harris had once mentioned in her old interview transcript, the one he'd found inside the folder after everything ended. He stopped at her grave. Laura Harris, 1989 to 2025. She fought for truth until her last breath. He knelt, placed the flowers down gently, and rested his hand on the stone. "They cleared your name," he said softly. "They called you a hero on national news. You and Marcus both." The words felt strange, bitter and sweet. Jake took a deep breath. "You didn't die for nothing. You gave me a reason to fight again. You saved my boy." The wind brushed through the trees, almost like an answer. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the flash drive, the same one that brought down an empire. It was empty now, wiped clean, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. It was a reminder that truth always leaves a scar. As he stood to leave, he noticed something strange at the edge of the grave. A small sealed envelope tucked into the flowers from another visitor. He picked it up. On the front, written in neat, familiar handwriting, for Jake Turner. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. Inside was a note. "If you're reading this, you finished what I couldn't. Thank you for protecting my son, and for believing in me when no one else did." LH, Jake's breath caught. "Her son?" he whispered. He looked around. The cemetery was empty, then it hit him. The boy she'd mentioned in her police file, Eli Harris, age 7. A child who'd gone missing months before Laura's death. He flipped the note over. On the back was an address, one Jake didn't recognize. Chicago. That night, back in the motel, Jake sat by the window, the note in one hand, coffee in the other. Ben was asleep again, curled up with his stuffed dinosaur. He stared at the address, the city lights flickering outside. Every instinct told him to walk away, to start over, find peace, raise Ben far from the chaos. But there was something in that letter, something unfinished. He whispered, "You wanted me to protect him, didn't you?" The next morning, Jake packed their bags. Chicago, 2 days later. The address led them to a small neighborhood on the city's south side. A playground sat in the distance, kids laughing under the afternoon sun. Jake parked the truck and looked down at the letter again. The house number was 421. He walked up the steps, Ben trailing behind him. Before he could knock, the door opened. A woman stood there, late 20s, kind eyes, holding a little boy by the shoulders. "Can I help you?" she asked. Jake hesitated. I think this belongs to you." He handed her the note. She read it, eyes widening. Tears filled them almost instantly. "You knew Laura?" she whispered. Jake nodded. "She saved my life." The woman pressed a hand to her mouth. "I'm her sister." She looked down at the boy beside her. "And this is Eli." Jake crouched, smiling softly. "Your mom was one of the bravest people I ever met." Eli looked up, a little shy. "She told me someone would find me one day." She said his name was Jake. Jake froze. The sister smiled faintly. She recorded a message before she went undercover. Said if anything happened to her, a man named Jake Turner would know what to do. Jake's throat tightened. He blinked hard, trying not to let it show. "Guess she was right," he said quietly. The woman invited them in. They sat together for hours, sharing stories, filling in the missing pieces of Laura's life. Jake told them everything he could, leaving out the blood and the fear. When they finally stepped back outside, the sun was setting, warm, golden. Forgiving, Ben and Eli ran ahead, laughing, chasing fireflies across the grass. For the first time, Jake heard real laughter, not forced, not cautious. "Just pure," the sister turned to him. "You did more than anyone else ever could. You gave her justice." Jake looked out at the boys. "She gave me purpose." That night, as he tucked Ben into bed, the TV played softly in the background. A news anchor spoke. "The Crestfield corruption case has sparked nationwide police reform. The whistleblower's identity remains unknown, but sources confirm he was a former soldier and a single father." Jake muted the TV, smiling faintly. He looked out the motel window one last time. The rain had finally stopped for good. He whispered to himself, "Rest now, Laura. We finished it." Ben stirred. "Dad? Yeah, buddy? Are we safe now?" Jake smiled, brushing his son's hair back. "Yeah, we're safe." He turned off the light. Outside, the night was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear, but from peace. The world still had darkness. But for now, in this small corner of it, a single dad and his son had found light again, and far beyond the city, under the whispering trees of Crestfield Cemetery, the wind carried a single echo through the night, soft. "Grateful and free, thank you, Jake."